Thank you so much for joining me for Co-Create Your Beautiful Future. This is a free workshop, and I'm really excited about doing it because this is the thing of the day right now. We're going to be talking about the energy of this moment and this time, and it's a big deal, and probably you're feeling it. So let me just say a couple words about me. Most of you know me, but it looks like there's a couple people here I don't know. I've been a practicing astrologer for about a decade now, and I also do energy work as well as coaching work. And we're going to be playing with some of the energy work towards the end of today. So you'll get a little bit of a taste of some of it, not all of it, because we don't have that much time. The other thing I want to just say at the beginning is that at the last 10 or 15 minutes of today's hour will be a short presentation on something I have coming up that I would love to tell you about. You are under no obligation to stick around for that, so please only stay if it's something that you're interested in. And a couple of other thoughts, you will be getting the recording shortly after this concludes, and you'll be able to watch that indefinitely. I don't know exactly how long, but at least the next month, the recording will be available for you. So let me get started. I wanted to talk, actually, the first thing I want to do is ask you a question about what's going on in your life, just in a few words. What's going on for you? What are you experiencing that brought you here today? It'd be great if you could just put a few words in the chat. And I'll tell you while you're doing that, that what brought me to this point doing this is obviously watching the astrology, seeing how big it is in this 6 or 7 year period. We're going to be talking about that. But we are in a major time of change, and we see that in the world. It's a little hard for us to judge in our lifetimes how that compares to 50 years ago, 100 years, 500 years ago. But I can tell you from the astrological perspective and a historical perspective, we are in pretty much a change of eras and epochs, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So from my perspective, what I'm experiencing is a lot of chaos in the world. Whenever I look at the news, if I don't look at the news, it's not so bad. My local experience is a little bit like that. And yep, okay. And I also am experiencing that there's things that I've been wanting for a long time, both in my life and in the world, that feel like they're a long way away. And the astrology tells us it is time for those things to start coming together. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. So let me just see. Yep. So a new perspective. Yes, I totally understand needing a new perspective in a new cycle, need to build my life differently and differently from how I built it before, right? Yeah, that's a wonderful sentiment that we can't go forward in the way that we've been going in the past. I feel the need for coherence within, without. That's a great word, coherence. So we need to do things differently. We need a new way to see, right? A new perspective. Like it's almost like seeing the world through new eyes. And we can't do the things that we can't do things going forward like we've done them in the past. I'm just writing myself some notes. So yeah, so let me show you what we're going to be doing today. So we're talking about the why, and you're helping me with your why, and I'm telling you about my why. And now the next thing we're going to talk about is why now, and this whole thing about we really are transitioning into a new age. And we'll talk a little bit, I'll give you a little bit of an overview of that. And then we're going to talk about you and your dreams for the future. Towards the end of the presentation, we're really going to do some work with what's your dream. And you don't have to have some concrete idea of what you want. In fact, in some ways that can get in the way, right? Because we can get very attached to what something looks like, and we'll talk about that. We're going to talk about how dreams come true and how maybe they don't. we're going to do some exercises to hold the tension between where we want to go and where we are and the difference, right? The gap. We're going to try to work with holding that tension. And then, as I said, the last 10 minutes will be my presentation on how we could do some more things together. So in terms of why now, uh, we're in what you could call the Great Shift. There's a whole school of astrology that's called the Turning of the Ages Mystery School. Used to be the Shamanic Astrology School, if you're an astro geek and have been following them. And so they've done a lot of great work on this, but they're not the only ones. Really, we're in the turning of a 26,000-year cycle. And we're also in the turning of smaller cycles, such as moving from the Pisces, the age of Pisces, to the age of Aquarius, which we've been hearing about for years now, decades. And everybody has a different idea of a date. The Mayan calendar is another sort of time-keeping method from indigenous societies that shows us in a great transition. The Hindus have the yugas and the Kali Yuga, and again, showing that we're coming to a time of change. And then I love to quote the human design folks, because even though I don't really understand all the ways they get there, they talk about us being in what they call a great mutation that starts in 2027. I tend to not be that precise, but the astrology leading up to that year is definitely big, and big as in 500 years since we've seen some of it, and thousands of years since we've seen some of it. So let's talk a little bit about all that. Just quickly, this 6 or 7 year period, if you've been following the astrology at all, and again, you don't have to be an astro geek to kind of have felt it, certainly, but the astrology of it is that in 2020, in January, we had a triple conjunction, actually, of Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto that hadn't happened in that part of the sky for, I think it was 500 years or 700 years. I think it was since the 1200s when I went back and tried to find the previous triple conjunction. The Saturn and Pluto, and so the energies that were crashing together, Jupiter making things bigger, Saturn restricting and constricting and contracting and bringing things into form, and then Pluto, power, essentially power dynamics and eliminating what's non-essential. And of course, we had a very literal experience of eliminating what is non-essential and contraction and sort of everything stopping in January of 2020, or well, it was March when it finally happened, but that was part of the Saturn-Pluto conjunction specifically. Then the last conjunction in 2020 was Jupiter and Saturn together. And many of us watched it in the sky. In fact, some of the pictures, this is a picture of Saturn and Jupiter over the mountains where I live. And this was not right at the conjunction, but very close to it. And we watched those planets dancing together for most of the last half of 2020 and then early 2021. And we're actually in one of the turning points of their cycles right now, this week. So that's one of the reasons we're talking about this today. So just from the astrological point of view, that final conjunction in 2020 of Saturn and Jupiter, the big vision, the big expansion, the start of the new, and Saturn bringing things into form, crystallizing and contracting. It started a new 20-year cycle, a new 200-year cycle, and a new 800-year cycle of conjunctions that bring us more squarely and more dramatically into the age of connection, society, change in society, how we get information, how we use information, technology. AI is a great example of something that's a very literal manifestation of this new cycle. And of course, right now we're experiencing some tension about it, around it. So that was 2020 that sort of kicked off this big era of the shift in terms of the turning of the ages. And a couple of other things going on. Again, this is what the reason for the timing of this workshop today and some of the other things I'm working on. All three of the outer planets, what are known as the transpersonal planets, the planets that tend to be more collective, have more collective effects in nature, they're the invisible planets, they're beyond the visible realm. So they have more of an unconscious and more, they have their effects are more visible in the collective sometimes than our personal lives. And that's Uranus, the great awakener, the planet that creates sudden change, sudden shifts. Neptune, the planet of dreams and the numinous and imagination. And then the third, Pluto, the planet, as I said, power dynamics and that eliminative force that sort of, it brings things up from the basement, literally, sometimes, in order for us to see the shadows, see the things that need to be composted and changed. And for those of you that live in the US, we are in the midst of our collective Pluto return, meaning Pluto has come back to where it was at the moment that the nation was born. And Pluto cycles are, by definition, cycles of death and rebirth. And you could be, whether I think anywhere in the world, you can watch what's going on in the United States and know that we're in the midst of a huge, scary for many of us, transformation and a death of the old and a rebirth of the new. And that is a lot of what Pluto tends to feel like. So all three of those planets, these transpersonal, big collective force planets, change signs at the same time within like a 5-year period. Well, actually, it's less than that. Within a several year period, we have Pluto changing signs this year, Neptune changing signs next year, and then 2026, and then Uranus changing signs. I think, can't remember if it dips in next year, but by 2027. So all three of these planets are changing signs at the same time. And what that means, of course, as we look at them in the chart, is that all three of them are very closely aligned in what's known as a mini triangle. Triangle because these two are in a trine, a triangle angle. And then these, not so much, well, Saturn is part of it, at part of the shift, but Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus are all in sextiles to each other. So they're all working together as they move from one set of signs to another. And this big shift where the three planets shift together has not happened for, well, I know with Neptune in the middle, we haven't had this for 500, well, we haven't had this alignment of the sextiles for 500 years, but I don't know when. I think it's been much, much longer. In fact, somebody said thousands of years, but I don't have any precision to that, since all three planets have changed signs at the same time, and particularly in this cooperative alignment that they're in. So it really is, just from looking at the planetary alignments, if you're feeling like something is coming, you're not wrong, right? Because everything is beginning to shift. And I'm not going to tell you what it's going to look like. Maybe I'll do that in the next presentation I do. I'll try to take some guesses, but it's more what opportunities this presents for us. And then the last piece of this puzzle, astrological puzzle. Wow, that was the light. Okay, so I got my slides backwards. Here's the alignment of the outers, all the outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. You can see they're all at 4 degrees. Pluto has moved from Capricorn into Aquarius. Neptune is in Pisces right now, moving into Aries. Uranus and Taurus right now, moving into Gemini. And this I just happened to find this one. This is July of 2026. they're all in this exact alignment. So this is that they've all changed signs at the same time and they're all cooperating. But the last piece of this whole puzzle is Saturn, the planet of reality, contraction, manifestation, conjoining with Neptune, planet of dreams, imagination, at the 0 point of Aries, which is the beginning of the zodiac, which is called the world point. It's on the world's axis. And so one way of thinking about this is it's where the individual meets the world. And this is also like a collective as well as individual new beginning for everybody. And it's a new beginning in terms of, you could call it a clash, but there's also the opportunity for the integration of dream reality, right? Manifestation, Saturn, of collective ideals, Neptune. Reality, Saturn, meets imagination, Neptune. And again, at the first degree of the zodiac, where the personal meets the collective, and where it's a new start for everyone and everything. And this is a dramatic kind of big finale in terms of planetary conjunctions, and then knowing that we also have that later in 2026, and this alignment between the three planets continues for a little while longer and then starts to separate. But all of this to say that we are in this dramatic period of time that feels unsettled, feels uncertain, that requires us to look for a new perspective. And it also, like all crises, offers us an opportunity to work with it. And my philosophy about astrology is that it's not about what's happening to us, it's what we have an opportunity to co-create with. And that's why I call this co-create your future, and that's why we're going to be talking about what does it mean to co-create. So I just thought I'd bring one quote in here. Rick Tarnas wrote the book Cosmos and Psyche, which is it's basically an encyclopedic look at big planetary alignments and how they correspond to movements in history. And he talks about the heightened tension between ideals, hopes, and beliefs, Neptune, and the hard realities of life on the other, Saturn. And I think this is a slightly more, well, maybe a far more negative viewpoint than I would use for us as individuals. But what we tend to see in the collective around us is that the shadows are more visible because we're talking about the whole world, right? And one of the themes that I want to introduce now, that I'll reintroduce at the end, is that what you do as an individual, what I do as an individual, makes the world, right? We make up the collective. So what we do matters, and it's much more than you think. Many of us tend to, it's very easy to start feeling powerless when you read the news and do any kind of doom scrolling. Of course, these days, almost all scrolling is doom scrolling. But it's very easy to start feeling powerless. And one of the things I really want to leave you with today is you are not powerless. How you live your life and how you are in integrity with yourself really matters. And just from a sheer rational point of view, even if we don't get into morphogenetic fields and that sort of thing, even if we just think rationally, if enough of us live in integrity with our souls, and if enough of us really start to pay attention to our dreams of a beautiful future, then that's how it gets created, right? It's the classic Margaret Mead quote about never doubt that a small group of committed individuals can change the world, because indeed that's all that ever has. And there's been research on just how many people it takes to turn a tide, and I think it's even as small as 1%. It's not a lot. So you matter, and what you do matters. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to present this, is to give as many people as possible a chance to see this big picture and then decide how you want to participate in it. So the whole point of today is to talk about how do dreams really come true. And again, this is, all of this is my research and it's a thought experiment. And I'm just going to give you some ways to think about this. Here's the myth, right? And this is, thinking about what Beth said about needing to do things differently in order to create a different future. And I think a lot of this has to do with the transition from age of Pisces to age of Aquarius. And I have a lot to say about that, but it won't fit in an hour today. In the age of Pisces, I call it silver bullets and saviors, or grit and grim determination. And these are sort of the shadow Neptune, shadow Saturn. You could even say to some degree Saturn or shadow Jupiter, but it's this sort of, it's all good. And if I just align my energy, and if I just stay in the dream and I just think positive, or I get the kiss from the prince, or I find a knight in shining armor, and there are male and female versions of this, right? The slaying the dragon might be more the masculine version. It's kind of this silver bullet idea. All I need is this one kiss. All I need is this savior. All I need is this one thing. All I need is the right magic potion. All I need is the right ritual. All I need is to think positive. That's the silver bullet and savior part of the myth of creating your future. And then in the world I came out of, the corporate, very over masculinized world in industry, like basic old industry stuff, it was the get her done. Or the way I was raised was the pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Like it's all up to you. And if you're not getting what you want, you're not working hard enough. Just do it. Hard work equals results. And both of these might seem very different, but there's a common thread in both of these ways of trying to get what you want and to co-create your future. In fact, there's a couple of common threads. One of them is, if you're not getting what you want, you're not doing it right. Either you're not working hard enough, or you don't have the right magic ritual, or you're not thinking positive enough, or you're not putting out the right energy, blah, blah, blah. And the other common thread is that there's a sense in these of, this is what I want, and I'm going to get it. And so that's the shadow of most manifestation work. And that's the shadow that we're living under. And I did a whole 6-month program just on this co-creation and power and control. So that, again, it's something I could talk about for hours. But the shadow of manifestation is thinking that because I want it, I have to get it. And that if I have this dream, I have this idea of what I want, that it's an unhealthy attachment to the outcome of my dream, of my whatever it is I'm trying to manifest. It's that unhealthy attachment to getting it, rather than understanding that my right is to what I do, how I think, how I feel, what I do, but not to the outcome of my actions. This is straight out of the Bhagavad Gita, which is it's essentially one of the scriptures of the yoga tradition. And this is God speaking to the warrior on the battlefield, who's saying, stop worrying about who's going to win the war and start worrying about staying in integrity with yourself and doing what is right from the inside, right? And if you look around us, it's pretty obvious. And again, I'm so tuned into the American political scene today because for the first time ever, I'm actually in it, doing some volunteer work. And I've known this for decades, but it's very much in my face how there's so much in our society about the opposite of co-creation is the end justifies the means. Right. And that's the opposite of what God is telling Arjuna on the battlefield, It's not, you don't have the right to what the results are. You only have the right to staying in integrity and acting from that place. And so the shadow of all the manifestation methods, not all, but many of the manifestation methods that are out there right now, is this idea that I have to be in control and I have to get what I want, rather than I'm in conversation with reality, I'm in conversation with life. When I ask for what I want, then life or my partner or my bank or whatever it is has a right to speak as well. And we become, we enter into conversation. So that's, again, one of my major points is understanding that a lot of manifestation and a lot of this dreams, trying to bridge the gap between dreams and reality, it needs to be done in integrity and in conversation and as a co-creative process. So here's how I see it, how dreams become reality. Imagination, Neptune, or the dream, and action, Saturn, 3D reality. This could also be Jupiter and Mars. And there are other ways of looking at this astrologically. But what the period that we're in and the big forces are my imagination, my big dream, and the reality over time, action over time. That is Saturn's realm. This is how we do it. And first we clarify, right? We have to be clear about what it is we really want. And if you go back to what I was saying a few minutes ago about it's not the thing, right? Like I want a new home. I really want a new home. I've wanted a new home for several years now, for a lot of reasons. But when I sink into it, and we're going to be practicing this in a moment, when I sink into it and think about what do I want to experience in that new home, where the clarity comes that's more beauty, more light, more space, and so my experience, that experience is more and more accurate description of what I want. And it's also something that I have more ability to get even where I am now. And that's one of the ways we bridge dream and reality is we work on having the experience that we want in the present moment. And that is straight out of The Secret, right? Not saying that some of this stuff doesn't work. I'm saying it's typically not enough. It is enough for some people, right? Some people sometimes get exactly what they want by sitting down in meditation for 15 minutes. I don't know very many of those people, but I know some people do. And maybe some of you are people that do that. But imagination action over time and clarifying your dream, first thing, clarifying what you really want. And then the next thing is focusing on the dream. And this is a kind of a basic tenet of how life works, how energy works. And this is actually straight out of Ayurveda and yoga, is that you have to keep your attention on what you want. And as a practical matter, what that means is if you pick up your phone or whatever, go to the newspaper and look at all the things that are happening that scare you, it's not about ignoring them, but it's about coming back over and over and over to the future that you want and how you want to experience it. And your life force follows what you are putting your attention on. Your life force follows your focus. And so, for instance, well, what you put your attention on is what you love. So if you want world peace, for instance, but you're always reading about war in a very subtle but real way, that's what you're feeding. And again, it's not about burying your head in the sand and not being aware, but it is about where you put your focus on. And of course, it's also what you practice. I just like world peace as an example because it's so common for people to be, and I mean, the situation in the Middle East is a really obvious and good example. And I'm likely to offend some people when I say this, but you can't want peace in the Middle East and then want to go participate in violent protests, for instance, right? You can't want peace in the Middle East and hate one side or the other, because you're contributing the hate and the violence to the whole energetic situation. So it works both on the 3D level and the imaginal realm. And that's what we're getting with Neptune and Saturn, is we're getting this meeting of the imaginal realm and the reality realm, the 3D realm. And so it's we have to be in alignment in both places. So practicing the experience of what you want, again, what we're going to do in a moment here, is another way of doing this, right? And it's a way of keeping your attention and your energy towards what you want. And then there's a tension, right? There's a tension. And whenever we feel tension, this is what I want, but I don't have it. It can become like focusing on the tension and doing anything we can to get out of that tension. So some of what the work is becoming comfortable with and accepting the tension as part of what drives the change. If there's no tension, there's no change. And when we're talking about it from an astrological point of view, when we talk about the squares, the 90-degree angles between planets, such as what's going on between Saturn and Jupiter right now, that feels like tension. And if we move too quickly to try to resolve it, how many times have you leaped into something because you were too uncomfortable staying where you were, and then found out later that it would have been better to just sit with it and wait for the right opportunity to come along? That's holding the tension. And then again, I've been talking about aligning your energy through aligning both your imagination and your action. And then the last bit is time. Uh, we live in a world of time and space, at least we do on the physical level. And I don't care how much you're working with 5D and 4D and all the other Ds, if you're here, you're human and you're in the 3D realm, and we have to honor that. And one of the ways we honor that through action over time. Action over time. That's the Saturn manifesting portion of this co-creation piece. So I'm going to pause for a sip of water, and then we're going to do a little bit of a exercise. If you have questions or comments, feel free. Yep, peace, peace, peace. Yes, exactly. If you have questions or comments, feel free to drop them in the chat right now. And I did not mention at the beginning that you might want to have pen and paper. If you've got it nearby, you might want to grab it. Otherwise, you can obviously go back through the recording and do this again. Not seeing any comments, so we're just going to go right into this then. So the first thing I want to do today is we're just going to spend a couple of minutes in a meditation. I guess I call it a meditation. It's really, and it's not a visualization. It's more of an experiencing process. What I want for us right now is for each of us to close your eyes or take your gaze down, start to feel what's going on in your body. Really get in touch with your physical sensations. Feel the seat or the floor underneath you, whatever you're sitting on, wherever your feet are, wherever your seat is. Feel the physical sensations of being in contact with the earth. Just allow yourself to feel that grounding, that connection with the planet. And then we're going to sort of shortcut it a little bit, but so you're just getting in tune with and in touch with and kind of settled into your physical experience. And then start to bring yourself into, like, let your attention get broader and into your imagination. What is it that you want? If you have any sense of your dream, and maybe your dream right now is just world peace, but maybe there's something in your life that you want. And it can be something mundane, it can be something big, it can be whatever it is. Just start to have a sense of what is it that what's your dream? What's the beautiful future that you came here today to think about, to move towards? And when you have some idea of that future, maybe there's some fuzziness around the edges. And again, more concrete is not always better. Because, and again, it goes back to that not necessarily attaching, being too attached to the actual thing. It's more understanding what is it you want to experience. And so for the next few moments, maybe if you've got pen and paper, maybe jot some words, some thoughts down, but then notice, like, what does your beautiful future feel like? What emotions, what does it feel like emotionally? What are the feelings around it? And then make time also to sink into what are the physical sensations about it? How does your body feel in that future? Just spend a couple of moments. So describe it. What's your beautiful future? Jot a few words about it. How does it feel emotionally and otherwise? How does your body feel? What happens for your body? You're welcome to drop things into the chat if you like as well. Just going to spend another 2 minutes here in this experiencing the future. So look like, feel like, and feeling is such an incomplete word in our language because it can refer to emotions as well as sensations. So you want to pull both of those in. You want the physical experience as well as the emotional experience, as well as the mental descriptive experience, but make sure you get past the visualization. And maybe it's, yeah, I won't put words in your mouth. I was going to come up with words for you, but I'll let you do that. So another moment. Okay, does everybody, if you have some sense of your sensations, what's going on for you, you could drop a couple things in the chat if you like. The next thing we're going to do is pull up one of those sensations. So think about some way that you would feel, something you would experience in the future, in that beautiful dream that you have, whether it's world peace or the new home or whatever else it might be. Pull something out of that experience, just a word, and have a couple of words that would describe it, a word or two. Calm and creative. Okay, calm and creative. Mine is enlivened, calm and creative. So now, whatever word you've chosen, whatever word or words, whatever sense of your future is, now the next thing I'm going to ask you to do is, in fact, you might even want to open your eyes for this, kind of look around and come back to now and see if you can access that feeling, that sensation in this moment. So if you were saying common creative, can you find a sense of common creative in yourself right now? If enlivened, was the word or the sensation that you felt in the future, can you find a sense of being enlivened, feeling enlivened right now? And I'll just make a couple of comments that these are energies, right? All of our experiences are energies. These are all energetic signatures, if you will, and we have access to them in all moments. And you can feel peaceful in the midst of chaos. You can feel creative, even when you're super tired. You can feel calm, even in the midst of anxiety. You can find that experience if you remember that it's always available, and it's what you're tuning into. So just tune into that sense right now. Okay. Anybody have anything they want to share about that experience? Did it work? Do you have a sense of it? Are you able to kind of bring the future experience into the now, even for just a moment? Even just doesn't have to be like a big solid experience, but even a sense of it. Anybody want to comment? And I'll tell you that this is some of the energy work that I do, is to help people experience what they want to experience in the moment. Okay, we're going to keep moving just for the interest of time, because I have promised myself I'll have you out of here by 11 my time. So this is part of how we practice holding that tension. Ah, good. You were able to tap into the creative part. That's great. Thank you. Thanks, Beth. Yeah, and you can go back and practice that over and over. So the next thing I want to do is kind of come back to the tension piece, the tension between this is what I really want, again, world peace or my life or whatever it is, and this is where I am now, and sort of that gap in between. And I'm using the word tension. You might have a different way of labeling the experience. But similar to what we did before in terms of, can you access the experience that you want to have, the feeling that you want to have, just by focusing on it? Similar to that, I also want to do sort of the flip of it. So if you notice the tension or maybe there's a sense of lack, I'm not sure what word is going to describe it for you, but the tension between what I want and what I have now, and that sort of like, I'm not there yet. To me, it feels sort of like a I don't know a better word, but there's just a gap, a tension between them. So now what we're going to do is just lean into that tension. For just a moment, allow yourself to actually completely feel that sense of almost like conflict and fighting between what my beautiful future is and where I am now. See if you can just allow yourself to fully accept that there's a tension between them. Done other exercises where you just simply fully hold on to the wanting. But in this case, I really want to just experience, like fully accept and allow the tension between them. The tension between wanting peace and seeing the news, right? There's a little bit of almost like cognitive dissonance there. See if you can just fully allow that. And this is a way of like, sort of removing the judgment from something we don't like to feel. Because when we remove the judgment from it, it allows space for it to move. Basically, what we're doing is giving space for it to move. Because all these experiences, we live in an ever flowing flux in the universe. Things are always moving. So when we allow them to be, then we also allow them space to move. So just for a moment, kind of holding that tension, see what you notice, if anything. And then the last step that we're going to do today is now the next thing is from that place of really feeling into the future, accessing that experience in the current reality, in the now, accepting the tension that exists between the where we're going, what we want, and where we are. Then the next piece, action over time, action over time. So the next piece is, what is your next step? So again, just for a moment, you're just sinking into your physical embodied experience. Allow yourself to kind of get out of trying to figure it out. Just sink into the sense of the future, the experience that you want to have, the tension between the places, the tension between them. Don't worry if something doesn't come to you, but whatever arises for you, if you have any words, you have any thoughts, jot them down. And if they don't, just allow this question to sit. Allow this question to settle. Just allow it to sit. And you might find that sometime in the next hour or the next day or the next week, if you just kind of allow this question to sit there, that something will come to you about this is what needs to happen next. Right? This is the creative process. This is the co-creative process. Where do I want to go? Where am I now? Can I allow the tension in between? And then what's next?